the quest this week was to go out and watch some animals and think about if you're autistic, if you have a set of senses that allows you to interact with animals on a different level. But if you're not autistic and you're sensitive, of course, you've got plenty to say as well. I think that kind of exercise is important for all of us. So I thought I'd go around and call on people and see if they had something to share. And then at the end of that, I will tell my life story, since I've never really shared that with you guys. Morgan, you want to start?
Sure. Gosh, I mean, I was thinking about it and I was like, I definitely have interacted with an animal recently, but I just realized it was part of my dream last night. So that doesn't necessarily count.
I think it counts. I think it counts, actually.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I realized, where was I? Can't remember. Doing something. And I had pulled over on the side of the road to answer a text. And I noticed all of these, it was so weird how just a bunch of like cardinals and blue jays together on somebody's lawn. It was, I just thought they were so cute. So then I had to call somebody and tell them all about it. But yeah, that was the one thing I can distinctly remember that actually happened.
It's unusual that they spend a lot of close proximity.
Yeah.
Were you thinking that when you saw them?
Yeah, I usually you just see like one, maybe two together, but it was like 10 all in one area. So maybe somebody had just put some bird seed down, but I don't know. It was cool though. I liked it.
That is interesting. Yeah, usually, as you know, the blue jays will drive people away. So they, that is interesting. I'll have to see if I can find another instance of that happening.
Yep, that's me. Animals are definitely my thing. I always have magical days with animals every single day. I live by the water, by Long Island Sound, so there's just like oodles and oodles of interactions in my neighborhood between fox and all the different creatures that live at the beach. The only one I'm having issues with is rats. That's a problem by the shore. It's amazing. I've never seen such industrious creatures. And my Chinese sign is a rat. I am amazed, and I've had them as pets most of my kids' life. I mean, I brought them up with pet rats because I think rats are really, really a great starter pet for kids. And so anyway, and we've had some amazing rats, and as a matter of fact, most of the time they didn't even spend. It's not unusual. There was a time when you'd see two or three dogs and cats and pigeon and rats and guinea pigs all sitting in a pile, taking a big giant nap together in the middle of the living room. And the pigeons right on top of everybody. I've always had really, really happy experiences for the most part with dogs and multiple animals. Matter of fact, the rats used to love to jump up on the dogs and hang on and ride them all over the house. They got a big kick out of that. But and they had fabulous interactions interspecies. But when my kids played Dance Dance Revolution, you're dancing on this pad. The pigeon would walk over and stick her foot out, and my daughter would go, "Get your foot off there! You're gonna screw up my score." And then the pigeon would like stick her foot over again, and all of a sudden she'd jump on and start bouncing all over the pads and get all excited and mess up her score. And they couldn't wait to like type to the second I would get up from my computer. The pigeons would hop on my computer keypads and jump all over them and bounce up and down. They wanted to do whatever I was doing. And I used to just let them fly out the door in the morning. And but there's too many hawks now, so the pigeons only lasted so long. that was really sad because they can live to be 30 something years old, and they're unbelievably lovable. And I mean, all animals are. My house, all my animals are cuddle cuddle buddies. But but anyway, if I had lived in an apartment and I had to pick an animal, I would pick either a small little bird or a a guinea pig. Guinea pigs are really very friendly and sweet and like to sit on your lap, and that would be if somebody had to think about having a pet in an apartment, that would be my recommendation.
Yes, and more than two because they're so social.
Hmm.
They run, I didn't know this, they run in packs, and like 100 at a time in their native habitat.
And they're so sweet. They really are very lovable animals.
I see you've got animals with you right now. That's so cool.
Yeah, I figure it's a good time because these are just my best friends and my therapist have like a little unofficial rescue animal sanctuary. I do work as a farrier and an animal trainer, so oftentimes I get the difficult ones. My donkey, he had a really bad wound on his leg, and people actually paid me $50 to take him because they couldn't. I didn't know he'd survive, but he did. And the horse I got like a year and a half ago because he was deemed dangerous and too difficult. He was just very abused, and he has turned out to be like the sweetest, most noble horse, like fun to ride and definitely not dangerous at all. So I would love to do like equine therapy for autistic kids at some point. But I have worked with a few autistic children because I think I don't know, like autistic people just have a way of communicating with each other. Um, like even with like nonverbal autistics, I seem to just be able to understand what they want. And yeah, this is my life. I don't really hang out with people. I hang out with horses. I think that autistic we're kind of more empathetic than sympathetic, and like I almost feel like I am like an empath. Like I can understand what they say. And it was other people that recognized that in me. Like a friend of mine, she had a Great Dane and he wasn't eating. And she's like, "Oh, you're great with animals. Just see if you could figure out what's wrong." And I'd never done that before. And I would just sat next to the dog and I was like, "I heard you're not feeling well. Like, what's wrong?" And the dog opened its mouth up and showed me it had a really bad infected tooth. I'm like, wow, maybe it does work. But yeah, I've grown up around horses and always had that ability to really, you know, work with them and understand them. It's all about patience and them like consenting to it. It's like for the first 3 times, like I couldn't even catch him in the pasture, and I started to like run away from him. He started following me, and just like he'll tell me like just take one little step towards me, and as long as I wait till that point, like it's good. But if I try to force it, which happened to him before, like they just totally. I don't know if I'm making sense on that, but yeah, I feel like I have that ability. With people, it's definitely lacking. I'm so misunderstood by so many people. It's very confusing to me. He's actually a well-bred Pasifino, but he won second place. He actually speaks Spanish. I think he's an ass. I call him like with Asperger's. He doesn't act like a normal donkey, and he's just funny. He's so smart. He opened doors, hangs out my house.
Yeah, I used to have a goat that used to go backpacking with us and hiking and riding in the car and along with the dogs, and he'd go. Except for he'd lead the dogs up the side of cliffs instead of on the trails. So I'm like, wait, hold on, everybody, back up. You couldn't get the goat to back up, but um, so animals are just they make life so much better.
Unique. Like the 4-beat trot gait, they don't really can't post. but it's completely natural. It's like a very quick, because they're made to be like military horses. So they're small stuff. They could carry a lot of weight and be steady for people to shoot off of them. So they're bred to be very intelligent. Now they just kind of show them like beauty horses. They actually break their tail into a J to make it look special.
Thank you for sharing all that.
So when we did this unit last time, Roger talked about a really cool experience he had with some deer.
Oh, I remember that.
And so I'm anxious to hear what he's got to say this week.
I guess every time I notice that there's other living things around, it crosses my mind what it might be like to be that other thing. And sometimes I can see certain parts of our nature reflected in these other living things. I'm just hearing a lot of the different experiences here. We talked about dogs and how often dogs they very much, a lot of dogs, they very much like human attention, and that varies to certain degrees. But I was with my sister has a little dog that I spent some time with a couple weeks ago. And the dog is, it's like constantly like climbing on your lap, or wants to be pet. So this dog seems to be a lot more social than I would ever be. But then I think like, well, there are certain times and that you would sort of like to have that kind of attention from, say, another human being. Except the dog seems to want that all the time. Well, this particular dog does. And then you have a sort of on the other end, the spider in the bathroom. It's always sort of an interesting thing if you really stop to think about it. Where it's something that you don't necessarily notice, and it has its own territory, and it kind of looks like it hangs out. There's no motion. There's sort of a response to stimuli. If there's like a breeze or something there's like shadow or light, the spider will move. And it makes you think like, well, I wonder what that would be like, if one were to have that existence. So it's almost like, I guess life would be very short compared to a human being, and it seems like it would be more of a solitary type of life, where you're literally, I guess you're avoiding danger, and you're trying to keep yourself fed. And I think about that as like sort of like a basic like human function, in that at the very least, we have to, I guess, try to stay alive and avoid danger, but at the same time, we have to eat. And the interesting part is that sometimes we feel, at least I can speak for myself, like sometimes that's how I feel as well. And so the other instances, I may feel like the dog, where you want to be around people, you like the attention, you're high energy. Like the dog, for instance, it's constantly looking around, and it seems like it's very distractible. And sometimes, I feel that way as well. And then there's all these sort of different life forms. That like birds, for instance, flying in a group. They one bird does something, maybe the other bird does something. And sometimes I think about, well, you kind of do that as people. There may be a leader, but there's sort of this social coordination where we participate, in a group, and it's sort of that coordination and group participation is what ensures, the survival of the group. So I guess I can't say that I, maybe would relate to one particular animal, but I do wonder if, like, part of our our nature, can be reflected in all of the biodiversity around us. And we shouldn't really think of ourselves as, maybe we shouldn't think of ourselves as one-dimensional, that we are, people are, a certain way, a kind of a stereotyped way, but very possible that our natures are, we can sort of see ourselves, and not all of ourselves, but parts of ourselves in the living things around us. And I think it definitely gives a greater appreciation for other life, and I think a greater peace, in thinking about that, than being so focused on what people are often distracted, things that they don't have, or being having like the certain status or certain like physical possessions, and all this stuff. And you look around you and you see all these other living things, they're able to kind of exist without all of that distraction, and they seem content.
I love spiders.
Every time I see an insect, well, this is the funny part is, a friend of mine posted this picture of a spider. I think it was a tarantula or something, and it had all these little baby tarantulas, perched on it. And like the reactions were just so negative.
Yeah, I used to have a pet tarantula, and it was really nice.
I don't think animals look at us and think, oh yeah, we gotta get rid of that.
I mean, I've been in my house for 30, I think 30 years, or almost 30 years, and I have so many spiders that have been, I bring spiders in the house too. but I mean, I have my little sugar spiders on the counter that for years and generations, they eat all the sugar ants when they come in, because the ants start taking over the house. It's something about living by the shore, maybe. But anyways, they totally keep the whole population of ants inside the house under control. There's still ants, but they're not overwhelming. And I bring, like I said, spiders in, but I actually learned how to sweep, and I know which way the spiders run. So I've gotten a pattern where I don't accidentally sweep them up the minute they run. So I've actually adapted a lot of things in my house to spiders, because my husband goes crazy because I leave all the spider webs at the top with the baby eggs on the ceiling, and I'm like, those are my next year's spiders, thank you. But so it's not easy living with somebody who's really in tune with nature. But yeah, I even have bathtub spiders that have lived in my bathtub for years. I take them out every time I go to take a shower, then I put them back in after.
You and I need to find some women to do like the autistic animal lover version of the Golden Girls at some point.
Like,
Let's just make a pact in 20 years or whatever. That'll be us.
That's a good idea.
More bathtubs.
I seriously cultivate strange, well, not strange, but symbiotic relationships.
If one is different, then you tend to appreciate differences around you. Whereas if you're mainstream, then maybe are you less likely to appreciate different things?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure if that's true or not. But I would think that would seem like more of a sensible response to appreciate differences, because this whole ecosystem is about differences.
Oh, I was just saying, this dog is, speaking of having needs and asserting them, not sure what he needs. I was just saying, I'll, if you guys are interested, I'll share some of my animal interactions. When I was growing up, I understood animals better than human beings and would spend hours just watching them in the woods. I was very blessed that I grew up kind of a last of a breed. I used to ride my horse into town to get a Coca-Cola. Like, we lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and I was really, really awkward in school, and I was always getting picked on. So on the playground, I would play with the worms, or I would watch the birds, or whatever, and just try to be really small and inconspicuous. And then at one point, my parents decided that they would get 3 steers to raise, and I didn't realize what they were for. I don't know how this escaped my understanding, but they became my very best friends. I was about 12, and each day I would run home from school, and we would just hang out together in the field. They would get down on the ground and let me climb on their backs, and then go under the apple trees so I could pitch apples down to them. We would take long naps in the sun, and they would, wrap around me, but always making sure their hooves didn't hurt me or anything. We had a very symbiotic relationship. Anyway, my parents decided it was important for us to know where our meat came from, and they had my sister and I watch while they slaughtered these cows. And I was just devastated. I'd never made the connection, and these cows particularly were my friends. So I remember sitting there at the table saying, I won't eat this, when my mom served me a piece of these cows. She's like, the only difference between this one and the one you get at the store is that you didn't know the one at the store. I was like, oh my God, you're right. I'm not eating any of them. So as a 12-year-old in ranching Montana, this went over, as you can imagine, like a fart in church. But that was really like the start of my asserting that my connection with animals gave me insight, and that they were important, that every social feeling we have, we share with social animals. I mean, our upstairs, our attic where we think of everything is like icing on a cake. And the rest of it is emotions and connections we share. Social animals share all of them, I've seen in my career. So as a person who was picked on, I ended up homeless. I left home when I was 15. I was homeless off and on for 5 years. Ended up in Seattle, where, long story short, I met the gorillas. And it was so amazing because I came around the corner and saw the gorillas at the zoo. And I thought, these are people who understand me. and I am going to understand them. And I stayed there for an hour and a half that first day. And I was to learn later that gorillas, that's how long gorillas take to warm up to you, is about an hour and a half. Like around an hour, they'll start glancing at you very politely, acknowledging that you're there. And the average zoo goer stops for 5 seconds in front of the gorillas. And so I think they need to know that you're really in it to win it. Like they need to know you have some commitment before they get to know you. So it was my safe place for years. I feel like it healed my nervous system. I would just go there and watch them and learn things from them, and they would actively teach me things. And I worked with them for 13 years. And so I feel this tremendous responsibility toward them because they gave me my personhood. After I started doing lectures, detractors would often say, "You're anthropomorphizing animals, gorillas specifically." And I'd say, actually, if you knew my history, I'm gorilla-morphizing human beings because it's the only way I can understand them. Like I didn't know through all the human noise that human beings had true affectionate feelings. I didn't know through human noise that humans had real insecurities and needed each other. I learned all that through my work with primates. And so now in my life, I don't really make any distinction between us. And people will say, but where do we draw the line? Why does there have to be a line? I don't think I'll ever understand that. People want to know what makes us different than other animals. And I really, really honestly at this point, I think it's the degree to which we can make things up and believe them. I think that's really the only difference. And I feel like a lot of that has gotten us in a pickle. So anyway, that's my experience with animals. And it's made me particularly interested in the intersectionality of autistic perception and animal life.
That's really amazing, John. That's like just so incredibly important, especially now when it's so important to save them and understand them. But I had the same exact experience. I mean, I wasn't really allowed to feel as a kid, and so it was animals that taught me about feelings and being human.
Yeah, we have a lot in common that way. I mean, it was because of the gorillas I was even able to go back to college. I was so traumatized from school that I was talking about being able to figure out what was wrong with animals or what was going on with animals. I was able, after watching the gorillas for so long and knowing them so well, I was able to diagnose one of the gorillas with a kidney ailment.
And nobody else
Could figure it out, you know? And then the zoo director of like the independent studies and different things, he always signed off on things, the research director. He said, you really need to, you're good at this, you need to go back to school. And I said, I'm never going back to school. I will never go back to school. You will not get me to go back to school. He's like, no, listen, college is different. Let's start with a couple courses and see how you do. And yeah, so he eventually got me into like studying gorillas for credit is how I got into college at first. And then of course I had the experience where I saw the gorillas using tools and was able to give the paper at the Jane Goodall Institute, and the rest was history. But yeah, animals are amazingly restorative in so many ways in our lives. So I thought what might be fun today, if you guys are up for it, we don't have a whole lot of time left, but I thought it'd be fun to sort of sketch your favorite animal, draw your favorite animal, and with yourself in the picture, sort of try to capture visually what you experience with that animal. I thought that might be an interesting, kind of a different way to capture those experiences. So for you guys who are new or not here every time, if we don't have a guest speaker, we sort of keep talking. People can just have conversations, and we get out our art materials and just sort of draw what we're feeling. And then at the end, we can share them and hopefully put them on the Facebook page. I drew a picture,
Oh, that's so nice.
me and a gorilla
Sort of
being one unit.
More.
Yeah, I really don't. Animal.
Yeah, I'll
That's
put that up
great.
on the Facebook page. Did anybody else draw anything? That's
I
so
think-
cute.
It's just kind of a sketch. I wanted to draw the dogs and the chickens and the cat, but it's just, I might do that, like, I'm just using a pen, but actually make a painting of it or something.
That would be fantastic. And if you are willing, it would be great to have it up on the Facebook page.
I have this picture that, oh gee, let's see. Can you see that well?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a picture of an octopus. I've been reading all sorts of books on octopus, and I just think that I can't even imagine what cool minds they have and how much they want to communicate and how much they actually go ahead and like humans.
They have brains, like they have brain extensions or individual brains in every arm.
Yeah, it's just, I can't imagine having a body that you can sense so much taste. I mean, it's unbelievable the information that they can extract from touching something and smelling it. I mean, they have so many degrees of sensory. There's got to be, I can't think of another animal that extraordinary, and their relationships with people are extraordinary. If I had, yeah, they're just, it's got to be, it. My mind gets so excited every time I even contemplate it. I sit there and sometimes try to imagine being an octopus at night. But I would love to volunteer, and if I ever got a chance to work with an octopus.
Cool. Well, if you ever do, I'd like to be there to witness that. So next week, my really good friend Michael Backen is going to join us. He's a musician. He's played with all kinds of amazing people, and he's developed these programs for autistic people to make music and express themselves as a group through sound. We've been blessed with some really amazing speakers already so far, and it really underscores that, you know, they're much better at doing this job than I am.
Also have a number of books yourself, but I don't think you've had the opportunity to discuss them individually. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I can talk about them next week. And the movie, we got good news on the movie that's being made of my life memoir book. Have a terrific week. Let me know if you need anything, and we'll look forward to Michael next week.